Real Gamers MMBR wanted me to take a look at retrospective review of 40K's Dawn of War by Thunderpsyker. Now, Thunderpsyker, if you didn't know, plays the part of the custodian known as Kitten in text-to-speech. So I got high hopes for this. We're not even going to say anything more. We're just going to get into it. I love playing Dawn of War. I can't do it right now. Obvious reasons.
Hey, Thunder. How are those videos coming along?
I know that feel.
Dawn of War! The most successful video game series tied to the
so
Warhammer 40,000 franchise. And there's not much else competing for that title. Warhammer 40,000's history with gaming has been a lot like other franchises, and this was very much the case prior to 2004. A couple of games from back then are defended as being pretty good, but it was, for the most part, a dark age of technology. Thankfully, Dawn of War rose up like the Emperor himself, leading the franchise on a great crusade of sales, having a few sons, getting betrayed, being turned into a new form, and causing a civil war between fans of the franchise. Hey, why has nobody made this analogy before? Relic Entertainment, the creators of Homeworld and who would go on to develop Company of Heroes, created a near-perfect formula for appealing to fans of the franchise and providing something unique to the real-time strategy genre. To find out how, let's look back upon the series, starting with Dawn of War 1. Because, seriously, where else are you going to start up with? Like, Dawn of 4? Immediately, any worries that 40k won't get the treatment it's deserved are put to rest by the fantastic opening cinematic. It's over the top, it's thunderous, it's devoid of any tactical sense, but it is Warhammer 40,000 at its crudest. Their tactical advantage is close combat? Well, so is ours! Except for you, heavy bolter guy, you're gonna get fucked. Well, the whole squad's dead, but we managed to put a flag up.
Yeah.
Trust me, it makes a lot more sense once you start playing the game. And there you have it. An orange sky, a pile of rubble, and a superhuman warrior right before you on the menu screen. You could say that this scene is perhaps the dawn of war. Oh, genius!
That was horrible.
The human-controlled planet of Tartarus is being overrun by a race of barbaric, war-hungry savages who are defending themselves from the orcs. Thankfully, the planet's underpowered defense forces are saved by a company of space marines calling themselves the Blood Ravens, led by their captain Gabriel Angelos and the company's librarian known as Isidore. No, not that kind of librarian. These are the kind that are 7 feet tall, shoot lightning out their fingers and read minds. Sort of like the one at that school I went to before that freak electrical fire happened. Things aren't all as they seem on Tartarus, however, as during the campaign the Blood Ravens encountered the mysterious Eldar, the Imperial Inquisition, and a band of renegade space marines with a thing for spikes and doing deals with dark gods.
Yeah.
Bale and Sindri, who surprisingly don't resemble Bulk and Skull, are searching for a secret buried within the planet that will doom Tartarus and its entire populace to their deaths. Or a terrible fashion sense. As the story goes on, Gabriel and Isidore's trust begins to whittle away, with Isidore brash and impatient to destroy the orcs, and Gabriel's judgment skewed by his past actions, all while the influence of chaos creeps into their minds to corrupt them. It's a fairly predictable plot, but it's interesting seeing a character-driven story in not only an RTS, but also a Warhammer 40,000 game. It's not the pinnacle of narrative storytelling, of course, but it manages to be engaging without compromising anything about 40k's feel. I think this is largely helped out by the absolutely stellar performances of the game's voice actors.
You are a brave man, Colonel. I wish I could say the same of your men.
Just make sure it's the last fight of their lives.
Orcs only respect strength. I intend to show them that we have it in ample supply.
Yeah, you gotta love the voice acting.
I cannot think of a single unit in this game which was poorly voiced. Every unit sounds as you'd imagine them to in the universe, and there are some seriously memorable RTS quotes from this game, which, considering this is RTS we're talking about, is saying something.
Walk softly and carry a big gun.
Green is best.
Do you hear the voices too?
I am pretty sure that spending 10 years listening to these voices have turned my balls into ceramite. Dawn of War has one of the strongest casts I've ever heard, not just from how fantastic the voices themselves are, but also the sheer variety that the actors can pull off. Which is good, because the in-game cinematics are...
rough.
Alright, I know. It was 2004, and in-engine RTS cutscenes don't tend to be cinematic masterpieces anyway, but...
Boom!
Come on! what's going on in this shot? Like, was Gabriel meant to go there, or it doesn't completely remove you from the experience. It just looks off.
Silly.
Now, assuming you need a reason to get this game other than to listen to Sindri's voice to help you sleep or something, followed by Gabriel's to wake you up afterwards, what does Dawn of War offer to you as an RTS game in its own right? Well, Dawn of War is a very aggressive strategy game, focusing on any mechanics which emphasize the battle you're fighting and stripping down any that don't. Strategic points scattered around the map provide you with your main resource, and since you can only build in surrounding areas of these points, plus your HQ, you need to gain as much ground as feasibly possible.
Yep.
And how do you capture these points? Well, you shove a flag into them, and then you pay your respects to the mysterious ground computer that rises beneath it. Don't do that. That's very disrespectful. Oh God, they just won't stop. I'm so sorry. I can't stop. Well, I mean, I guess that explains the introduction. They needed that point to get the line of sight so that they could spam drop pods on the enemy base. Just like a true Space Marine player.
Yep.
Infantry units come in squads as opposed to single soldiers, and these units can be reinforced with all members and equipped with special weapons. Squads are forced to engage in close combat if charged by another unit, similar to the tabletop, and you can even get to see them exchange blows and flinch from attacks, as well as finish each other off in brutally over-the-top ways.
Love the
Combine that
Dreadnought.
with persistent bodies, and it is a glorious scene
Yep.
of warfare and destruction that does the grim darkness of the 41st millennium so much justice. Little 8-year-old me was only used to seeing this on his brother's boxy computer monitor back in the day, so perhaps the first time I saw a big mech grab a chaos cultist and drain enough gore to make Tarantino shed bloody tears, I knew what Warhammer 40,000 was about. It wasn't about picking bushes or George Bushes, it was about of crusaders in space killing things they don't understand. The morale system affects your troops' defense, accuracy, and melee damage during combat. A squad will break after too many losses, and although you can reinforce units on the fly, you'll end up losing your unit if you don't pull them back.
Right.
Snipers, flamethrowers, artillery, and massive fucking demons do significant damage to morale. And it ends up feeling like a very natural game mechanic. Well, you know, it makes sense, doesn't it? I mean, if this was happening to you, you wouldn't stick around for it.
No.
Would you? Do you think you're hard or something? Do you think you're fucking tough? Do you like fucking walk around in winter without a shirt on, like you fucking John Cena dressed as Crash Bandicoot? I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about. The campaign restricts you to playing as the Space Marines, who pack versatile heavy infantry and sturdy vehicles, but the skirmish mode also lets you play as the Orcs, Eldar, and Forces of Chaos. The Orcs are a horde army with morale-boosting leaders. Chaos mix elements of the Space Marines and the Orcs together using fucking demons. And the Eldar, an army with specialized units which were intended to be stealth and speed focused, but you can just kind of make one of every unit and use them like skinnier orcs. When you
Pretty
consider
much.
that during development there was uncertainty whether Dawn of War would get expansions or sequels, I think these four were the best picks when it comes to showing some of the most iconic and influential races from 40k, while offering the most distinct playstyles and visual differences from one another. And they succeed in that. They're all fresh and different enough from one another to make me want to try them all out. The campaign's 11 missions are pretty basic. You mostly go from point A to point B, destroying anything you find in your path.
And the soundtrack is fucking awesome.
While most objectives actually are to destroy the enemy, you encounter pretty much everything simply by progressing forward. It's mostly a mix of the game's mechanics and level design making you behave this way, but perhaps that's just me playing thoroughly. Personally, I find it much more favourable than tediously scouring the map like a gruesome version of a collectathon platformer. You're gradually introduced to new units and different enemies over each mission, and when you do get them, you're taught how to use them through the game's level design. It works quite nicely as a gradual tutorial to let players unfamiliar with real-time strategy games get to grips with how it works, and despite being 11 hours longer, it is much more favourable than the actual tutorial that you can play.
The mouse is your primary method of surveying the battle, selecting units and structures, and issuing orders. The mouse controls the camera. The camera represents your current view of the battlefield.
The skirmish mode is where Dawn of War's game mechanics really come into their own. With 36 maps and up to 8 players, there's plenty of replay value along with the different races and the way that you play the game. And it can even be played online to team up against the AI or challenge another player. Whether you play at 1v1, 2v2, 3, 4, 3v1v2, or 5v3, or 2v3v3, or 4v5v5, you can create some intense and exciting battles that are a serious display of carnage with all of the animations and blood and the persistent bodies that you can turn on. It's great. I like the variety of different game options you can choose from, ranging from the victory conditions to even strange little things like the game speed. My personal favourite though is the Army Painter, which does exactly what it says.
Everyone
What I
loves
love
that.
most about it though is that you have full control of every colour instead of just being restricted purely to presets. That means you can get just the right shade of pink for your inevitable fabulous Orc clan. You know you do this, you don't have to hide that from me. You can even import custom badges and banners if you want. Don't ask, I was hungry at the time. With all the footage that's been up for the past... how many minutes? 10? Oh fuck, I better make this quick. You've probably had plenty of time to take in Dawn of War's visuals. Despite coming out in 2004 where some seriously good looking games were released, I don't think this has aged too badly.
No, it
Maybe I'm
hasn't,
not the
really.
best judge though, since I'm the kind of person who can find even the most polygonal looking PlayStation 1 game nice to look at, as so long as it's got good colour composition. It blew me away back in the day though. The only strategy games I'd played before was this one stage of Command & Conquer and an arseload of Age of Empires 2.
I think
It was like a
everybody
Sega CD advert the first time I saw it. The choice of environment helps. The riverbeds and mountains mixed in with the ruined cities break some visual monotony during your playthrough. Some 40k games set themselves entirely in the iconic Gothic-styled imperial cities that are a staple of 40k, but without clever level design, the constant greys and browns get mind-numbingly dull to look at very quickly. Another option is to replicate the kind of battlescapes you'd make out of terrain pieces on the tabletop game, but that usually results in weird contrast between the battle-scarred bunkers and the fluorescent green smurf grass.
Yep.
Thankfully, Tartarus is neither Gears of Warhammer nor Thomas the Demon Engine. The forests are dark and dingy, yet lush and natural, and the orange and purple skies over the war-torn streets generate some great atmosphere. Would you remember each mission from a snapshot? Not really. You might remember some set pieces, but only if you played the game multiple times, and the same goes for multiplayer maps. To each their own though, really. It all depends on your attitude to playing older games without visual overhauls. I mean, do you feel disgusted looking at it? No? Good, buy the game, you'll love it, you can do this. Surprisingly, Dawn of War soundtrack was written by renowned composer Jeremy Soule, who you may know for numerous BioWare games, The Elder Scrolls, and even a bit of MGS Peace Walker. It's rather refreshing knowing that the creator of the award-winning soundtrack to not Tom Cruise Oblivion, which I'll admit to listening to quite frequently in my spare time, has this under his repertoire as well. You can even hear influences to his later work in some of Dawn of War's tracks.
Literally the best soundtrack of any game I've ever heard.
Unfortunately, the soundtrack is played so infrequently in the campaign that a lot of the atmosphere it could add is lost. The calmer and contemplative tracks fit the tone of the story so well, with not only the whittling friendship between Gabriel and Isidore, but also what's happening to Tartarus and its people. The battle tracks, however, are fittingly powerful for the Battles of the Skirmish mode, although a little bit generic and lack the iconography that different races' themes have. Except the Orc theme, which I can't remember for the life of me which one that was. I've given the voice work praise already, but Dawn of War's sound design is also pretty solid, with the effects and ambience able to leave their intended impact, and able to portray some of 40k's iconic weapons pretty well. Except from the bolter, it's hilariously underportrayed as nothing more than an oversized machine gun.
Right.
Bolters and dated visuals aside though, Dawn of War is a brilliant Warhammer game, but more than that, a great real-time strategy game. The way Relic handled its mechanics was a stroke of brilliance, giving the fans of the tabletop something familiar to play, but also showing how all of those tabletop battles would have looked if we were playing in the super future with that Star Wars chessboard or something. Even Games Workshop themselves were blown away by Dawn of War's ability to show what dozens of books had painstakingly written. And they were probably more than happy to accept the new wave of fans who found Dawn of War an enjoyable experience and wanted to see more of what the universe offered. If I had to put a score on the game's quality, taking into account the content, presentation, depth, and narrative, I'd probably give it somewhere around an 8 out of 10. Playing through the campaign and giving some skirmish matches a go would give you a good couple dozen hours of playtime. There's minor issues with the in-game cutscenes and some balance issues, but that's mostly if you want to play hardcore competitive matches like CSGO or Splatoon or
Splatoon?
The Sims. I think what holds me back from scoring it higher is that there's so much more room for 40k's diverse races, which would have kept me coming back to skirmish mode even further. Luckily, with Dawn of War being a critical and financial success, Relic knew just how to expand upon that. I mean, do you get it? because they go and release and expand. Join me next time for Dawn of War: Winter Assault.
Alright, so that was Thunderpsyker's retrospective review of 40K's Dawn of War. What more is there to be said about it? Dawn of War is still one of the best games that I've ever played. And that's sad considering I played it 17 years ago? Maybe longer? I don't know. I'm an old shit. In any case, this thing's trying to fall asleep. So I'm going to put it down, try to get it to go to sleep, and I'll see you guys on the next one. As soon as I hit the button. Again.